Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Community Oversight Committee of Wednesday, May 28th, starting at 3 p.m. So let's start with our call to order.
Certainly, sir. And you've done that.
In the roll call. Sorry.
Okay. Starting with Rebecca Suggs.
Here.
Okay. Pat Randolph.
Here.
Larry Minikis.
Here.
Jim Wagner.
Present.
Scott Pinsky.
Present.
Chair McCauley.
Is here.
And it looks like Jenny Biggs, our vice chair, she will be joining us momentarily, and we do not have Theo Hellman for this meeting.
Okay. Next on the agenda is agenda adjustments. I do have one suggestion. I think the flow might go a little bit better if we take the discussion item on the future meeting schedule, the item on the future meeting schedule, which is 7C, and slide it down a little bit and maybe do it after the oversight process discussion. I think that might be a more logical place for that. Just a small suggestion. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda order? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to hear a motion.
I move to approve the change to the agenda as noted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
And so that's a motion from Larry Minikis with a second from Scott Pinsky, and that is to, Chair, can you state it for the record?
Yes, take item 7C and move it down to make it after 8B.
Perfect. All right, and it looks like, because Rebecca's there. So starting with Rebecca Suggs,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Here.
Larry Minikis,
Yes.
Jim Wagner,
Approved.
Scott Pinsky,
Yes.
Chair
Yeah.
McCauley,
I agree.
and Sarah, the motion passes with unanimous consent of everyone currently present.
Okay, item 4 is open time for public expression. Do we have any members of the public on here?
It does not appear that we are, but for the purpose of the record, did you want to read
Sure,
the public
go for it.
expression? The public is welcome to address the Community Oversight Committee at this time on matters not currently on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant to the Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when not reporting out. For those joining us by phone, you may press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. So there are not currently any attendees, and I will advise you if anyone shows up.
Okay, good. So I don't have to check every time you move forward or something until you tell me that there is somebody on.
Correct.
Okay, good. All right. Next item is number 5, the executive officer's report.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will keep this brief because I think you probably heard a lot of what I said either at the exec or at the board, since it was, it was well-attended meetings since we were approving the work plan and budget. But there's a comment or two that I wanted to emphasize. Part of it is a comment that Dan Schwartz had made in an ops committee, and then we kind of carried that into the exec committee conversations. And that is, this was one of the first years where our operations committee really struggled, for lack of a better word, with the fact that we are at a zero-sum budget. We have, and if one budget category is going to go up, that means another budget category is going to go down. Prior to this year, I wouldn't say there was an abundance of revenue, but people hadn't really gotten to the bandwidth of being able to spend all of the money effectively and appropriately within their zones. So there was less of a competition for funding across the zones, across the different budget categories. And so I thought that was a great observation from Dan Schwartz, and that's also the validation to how our ops committee was purposely set up to have fire chiefs as the fire subject matter experts and town and city managers in there as the public governance subject matter experts, bringing the two together so that we could be as effective as we can with our taxpayers' dollars. And so that translated into many in-depth conversations, both at the advisory technical committee level and at the operations committee level, to make sure that we built the best work plan possible and spending the taxpayers' dollars appropriately. And yeah, her intent was good, but at the executive committee meeting, Rachel closed or was near the end of the meeting was saying, well, maybe in future years this will become easy. And I didn't want to contradict her in her meeting, but I thought it was actually important to mention that I don't think it should ever become easy. We're talking about 22 million or more of the taxpayers' dollars. I believe that it requires robust work, robust conversations, open and honest conversations. I think that we may have even gotten into a little bit more, I don't know if controversial is the right thing, but challenging conversations in public meetings, probably more challenging than some of our public meetings than you're used to seeing it in public meetings, which it makes for a difficult meeting sometimes, but I think it's good. I think you can honestly look at Marin Wildfire and say they're doing everything they can to spend the taxpayers' dollars appropriately. So that was basically all I wanted for my EO report.
Thank you, Mark.
Any comments from council? From CSC, sorry. Okay, so the next item on the list is the consent calendar. There's only one item on the consent. Are there any members of the public? Okay, does any member of the CLC want to pull a consent item for further discussion? Going to the minutes. Okay, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
And that is a motion from Larry Minikis with a second by Jim Wagner to approve the consent calendar as presented, starting with Rebecca Stubbs,
Yes.
Member Randolph,
Yes.
Member Minikis,
Yes.
Member Wagner,
Approve.
Member Pinsky,
Yes.
Chair McCauley,
I also approve.
and Vice Chair Biggs.
Approved.
And so that is a unanimous approval of the consent calendar, sir. And I did want to state for the minutes that Vice Chair Biggs did arrive at 3:05 this afternoon.
Okay, so next item, we move on to our action items. 7A is a welcome and introduction of our new Community Oversight Committee member, Scott Pinsky. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to join us, and thank you and welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say it's an honor to be invited to participate in this committee. I've been a Firewise leader, founder of my Firewise group actually since we joined the program under Fire Safe Marin about 5 or 6 years ago. That's how I got to know Mark through some of the projects that Marin Wildfire has been working on. So I have an awareness of issues relating to education, preparedness, and so forth, community involvement through the Firewise program. Beyond that, I've been involved in a number of community activities here in Marin during the 15 or so years that I've been living here. So one of the groups that I'm involved with, which Pat is involved with as well, is Marin Coalition, where we've actually had Mark do presentations to the community on matters of civic importance. So just have been kind of involved in civic things for quite a while. And Pat and I work together on Marin Coalition activities. And so she got me interested in this, and here I am.
Can you comment on your professional background?
Yeah, so I'm an attorney. I've practiced since the 80s in first Los Angeles, and then extended my practice up to San Francisco, and then eventually moved up to the Bay Area here in Marin about, as I said, about 15 years ago. And the practice area I've been involved in includes several over the decades. I did environmental litigation for a number of years. Unfortunately, on the wrong side, representing corporate defense issues, and then kind of transitioned into what you might call administrative law over the last few years, where I've been representing different cities on various matters that require outside counsel. I've never been a city attorney, paid staff member, but I've been acting as an outside attorney and done a fair number of cases involving legal disputes that city doesn't have a staff large enough to handle, so they hire an outside firm such as me. So that's mostly what my legal practice has been.
Great, well, you'd be a great addition to our group, and you can make sure we follow the Brown Act precisely.
Have to read it again.
Is he also chamber music? Very interested in chamber music, and what is the society called that you?
Well, yeah, it doesn't really relate to this committee, but I've been a chamber music fan or classical music fan, my whole life. And there's a group that presents concerts in San Francisco called Chamber Music San Francisco, which they get everybody, from Midori all the way down to play at Herbst under their banner. And I've been a subscriber for years, and they finally just sort of roped me in on the board over there. So been doing that for a fair number of years. And then I guess the other issue that Pat knows about is I'm a bit of a classic car guy, so I'm involved in a few classic car clubs, including mainly the Alfa Romeo Association, which I've been chairing that for a few years now.
I had a '67 Berlino.
Did you?
With a very rare sunroof.
And you got rid of it?
Eventually, yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I guess,
It was a wonderful car.
yeah, well, that's great. There's more out there. You can get another one.
I had a 74 Spider.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had my first car was my first real car was an '82 Spider. I had that for 28 years. Is this on the agenda?
It's part of welcome.
The amusing part about the 74 Spider was they came in with all the catalytic rules in '75, and Alpha did a very iconic thing. They just kept making 74s. That's true. So,
That's great.
So they were
That's
only,
great.
it was about halfway through the 75 year, and the state or federal government said, knock this off. So there were a lot of 74s around, but I did like that.
I became a great auto mechanic.
You have to.
You have to.
You have to.
That's
It's
true. There's no other way around it.
Well, we'll have to do some car talk later.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, welcome aboard. And
Well, thank
we're
you.
very appreciative of you helping us out.
Pleased to be here.
Okay, next up on the agenda is the chair and vice chair election. We're now on to an annual chair and vice chair position. This will be my last meeting as chair. And so we're ready to converse about who's going to come next. And I believe that you got some information about where we stand. It's kind of confusing because our appointments end in December, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and our fiscal's in June. So we want to make sure whoever we choose to be the vice chair will be here for the whole year.
Right.
Right, okay, so tell us what this is.
So as a reminder in the Wayback Machine, when we first had our first 9 members and they all came on at the exact same time, and we worked through our bylaws and decided that the terms were going to be 3 years, but we also thought it would be good to have 3 groups of 3 staggered, so you're not losing your entire COC at the same time.
Right.
So 3 people chose to self-volunteer for a 1-year term. That was Central Marin, West Marin, and the community-based organizations seat. So that's why you see those 3 groups in the same term ending. Then I actually literally still have the popsicle sticks that we used. I wrote the number of years on a popsicle stick, pulled it out, and wrote their name. Novato, Environmental, and Taxpayer ended up being in the 2-year term group. And then the final group was Santa Fe, Southern Marin, and Fire Prevention. And they ended up in the 3-year term. So on here, you see where the terms end. So the good news is that Jenny is vice chair, and typical progression is for Jenny to move into chair, which you guys would have to nominate for that. And that means that she'll be around for her the remainder of her term. Unfortunately, we will both Rebecca and Larry term out because we also have in the bylaws a 2-term max. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have one of them come into vice chair or chair. And even further, for the group that's terming out in 26, that would not allow that person who was a vice chair to roll into the chair. And so that kind of leaves, and he's one of the newest people on the committee, but it kind of leaves Jim Wagner as an appropriate choice to roll into the vice chair, gives him a year of being vice chair and learning from either that or Scott.
Check, please.
Okay, so with that, I would like to make a proposal that I would propose that Jenny takes over as chair and that Jim takes over as vice chair, assuming you're both willing to serve in those roles. Are there any, first, are you guys both willing to serve?
I am.
I am too. I feel like I'm sitting in the emergency exit of the plane. Like, speak up now. No, I'm happy to serve.
Good, okay. So I would like to make that proposal. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, you're doing a good job tonight.
I know.
I was just about to get my mouth open.
I'll take it back.
All right, good. So now we have a first and a second. So could we do a roll call, please?
Certainly, and that is a first by Chair McCauley with a second from Larry Minikis to nominate Jenny Biggs as our new chair and Jim Wagner as our vice chair of the Community Oversight Committee, starting with Rebecca Stubbs,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Yes,
Larry Minikis,
Yes.
Jim Wagner,
Approved.
Scott Pinsky,
Yes.
Jenny Biggs,
Yes.
Chair McCauley.
Also approved.
That is a unanimous vote.
All right, congratulations. Okay. So now we're gonna take, we're taking 7C and sliding that down. So now we're gonna move on to the Community Oversight Committee annual report. So let me tell you what happened in terms of getting a report out the door and what happened in terms of.
can
the
I
meeting
say
itself.
something
Sure.
before you say anything?
Sure.
I just want to say that both at the executive committee and at the board, John made us look good.
Thank you, John.
He was
Yes, that's right.
excellent at presenting the report and really,
Did a great job.
He even brought a joke.
I did. Only did it at the executive committee because I didn't want to push my luck. I'm a CPA by background, so I'm not allowed to be funny. Okay, well, thank you for that. I enjoyed both of the meetings. So let's do the meeting conversation first, then we'll get into the detail of what happened. Could you recall what our last meeting, the two of us were still working on some of the numbers, and there's a bit of a story there, but we did finally get the thing finished. As far as the meeting was concerned, I basically covered what's in our report from the perspective of our approach to each of the three areas, how we looked at core, what we did with core, how we looked at DSpace, what we did with DSpace, et cetera, also with local. And in connection with doing that, I was able to kind of display our risk analysis, where the risks are, right? Core lower risk because it's got lots of eyeballs, local higher risk because it disperses and it's neither large to the individual agencies or it's not necessarily large to us. So we went through that whole conversation and I thought it was useful to tee that up. And I also emphasized that the responsibility of the board was for all three categories. And that the board is responsible to not consider local or DSpace to be just a pass-through, but they're collectively responsible for the expenditure decisions in each of those areas. And that was consistent with some of our recommendations, because then I went through all our recommendations. We had 4 that remained open, the other 7, I think, whatever it is, were resolved. And we kind of went through all of them. And then for the ones that were open, we prescribed why they were open. A couple of them were open because it took us over a year to get a report out, and therefore it was beyond the next year, and we couldn't get things fixed quickly enough. One of them dealt with somebody getting something done soon, and he said it was going to be done soon. And then we had a bit of a protracted conversation about the question of the rangers, right? And I thought it was interesting in the ranger discussion because it started with the 2 cities most affected, Santerfell and Novato, saying, yeah, we're going to work this out. And before it went on too long, I was happy to hear that another member of the board spoke up and said, no, we all have to agree on the expenditures. And that's exactly the way it works, right? It's not, you don't give the local money to the agency and they do whatever they want with it. The board collectively has to decide that those expenditures are appropriate and are consistent with the 4 corners of the measure. So it's a robust conversation, which I was very pleased with seeing it occur. It eventually came to a conclusion that they would proceed and over the next meeting or 2, come to a conclusion, precise conclusion as to the question of what percentage of the ranger cost would be reimbursed by NWPA. And there was conversation that was consistent with what we said in our report, which was that we're not proposing on a precise, time clock day thing. It's not worth that effort. But that some definitive decision needs to be made by the board as to what percentage, if or all, of the expenditure should be reimbursed by us. And I also did emphasize a higher level of service question and the fact that every other agency within Marin also has dealings with homeless, which is done within the police function and is not being reimbursed by NWPA. So, I didn't want to, I have a personal opinion about that, but that was my job. But I emphasized on a number of occasions, board makes decisions, we make observations, or whatever the words are, but we are not the deciders. But if we see something that doesn't look right, we're going to bring it to them and they have to make a definitive decision. So I thought it was a productive discussion. Is that?
Yeah, and so what staff committed to was for Marin Wildfire staff to work with staff at San Rafael Fire, San Rafael PD, Novato Fire, Novato PD to do an analysis. And we were careful to make sure that beforehand that we would not be creating, that we already have data to analyze, and that we would not be creating a new workflow to create the data. So we have the data to analyze. And after, it'll be by the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 25-26, we will bring something back to the board to make a definitive answer.
And one thing I did, emphasize that if you're a police officer, these are sworn, trained, armed police officers doing this work. And there was some conversation about, well, when you're doing other things, we're not charging for education or for, being called out on a SWAT issue or whatever. But there's still, you had to be precise about, okay, that means every minute that they're spending in their ranger activities is being paid for by us. That's a distinction from, there's a little conversation about that that needed to be clarified in the way it's presented, but I think people understand how that works now. Did I say that diplomatically? Okay. Okay. So that is pretty much what happened there. Oh, no, then we have to get to the numbers. So the numbers, it wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be. I don't want to go too deep into, I can if you want, but in the big picture, the most important thing that happened was, so I said in the board meeting, so I'm a CPA by background and I served with a lot of public companies, and in serving public companies, one of the things that every board does and every accounting firm does is when all the work is done, bottoms up, you sit at the top and you look top down and you do what's called analytical procedures and say, okay, if inventories are way up and sales are way down, how does everything fit, right? How does it fit to make sure it comes together properly? When looking over the process towards the end, and unfortunately during the time we met and then quickly thereafter, I said, well, if we know that our total revenues over the whole 4 years and you multiply that times 60%, that gives you your core revenues, and you multiply that times 80%, that gives you your minimum spend, right? And then you take the actual expenditures and compare the two, and that should equal what the rollover is. Well, it didn't work, okay? And after a lot of back and forth, what we discovered was that in year one, the overhead that sat within core was not contemplated in the spend, okay? Because that, as you recall, we take both MWPA-wide activities and overhead, and we allocate it within the 5 buckets on a proportional basis. Well, that element didn't get included, and therefore year 2 roll forward was wrong, and 3 and 4 was wrong, and Lisa she just took the numbers from the prior year, fair enough. So there's a lot of back and forth. We finally figured that out. And there were some other changes which dealt with DSpace and local expenditures by agency. A couple of agencies were spending in excess of 100%, and Coordinator, I think it was?
Coordinator.
Yeah, and there was a question, okay, if you're overspending, do you want to have the right in a future year to say, okay, I'm done spending now, and I'll let the future payments catch me up? Or do you agree that you were spending more than you wanted to, and it's not NWPA's nickel? And the answer is that we're taking a position that is not NWPA's nickel. In other words, we will show them spending every dollar that comes in, and you're going to clarify that to make sure that everyone's on the same page about it from a legal, technical, perspective, right?
Can I make sure I understand?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so they have to cover it? If there's an overage, they have to cover it?
Well, it's been silent as to what happened. So in
But
other
that's
words,
what the decision is now.
no, the decision is that, so let's make it the numbers, that's how I think. So let's just say over 3 years, we gave them 300 and they spent 500. Now the question is,
200.
yeah.
I
for
got
the-
that.
That's right. So if they stopped right now and said, I'm not doing any more local, then the next 100 would catch them back up to zero, right? Or you would say, no, that extra spending of 200 was on our nickel, Corte Madera, and we're still obligated when I get 100 next year to spend it. So there's two ways to look at it.
Okay.
Right? And they've collectively taken the position that the overspend was off their account, not off of our account. And
And so there's only two agencies that it falls into that right now. That's Corte Madera and Larkspur. And so we have them sign, this is your cumulative rollover. And they sign and we put 0. And so they're signing on the sheet saying our cumulative rollover is 0. But there are organizations that have a decent sized general fund that can help cover those costs. For agencies, and I'll use Molina's Fire as an example, where their annual local is not all that big from Marin Wildfire, and their general fund isn't all that big. So if they could forecast, and I'll use easy numbers, let's say they are getting 20,000 a year in local, and they have not spent 1 year 20. And they have a project, and so the next year they're going to have a rollover of 20,000. They add that other 20, it's 40,000. But let's say they have a project they want to cover for 45,000. If they can project and tell us up front that they're going to go into arrears of a negative 5,000 rollover, then that's where we can agree on that rollover sheet. Negative 5,000. The next year it would be 15. Because we don't want to handcuff the smaller agencies that don't have a robust general fund, but as long as we're accounting for that.
Can I ask a quick question on that one? When the measure comes up for voters again, is that enough? I don't know the timeline well enough. Is that enough lead time so that decision will be in place for that last year, or does this have to change the last year just in case?
Whether the measure renews, or if the measure doesn't renew, then our end date is June 30th, 2030.
Got it.
But at that date, those monies are still restricted and committed, so that if the monies remain from all three categories, they must be spent on those elements.
And they would run, if they went into, let's say they dug into their own general fund in 2029, and we didn't renew, they would be doing that at their own risk.
That's what I was.
Yeah, they would be doing
Is
that at their
that
own
sort of
risk.
tail end? Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that my training is always to look for whatever could go wrong and use that to make sure the financials are fairly presented. The issue I would have is, let's say if it's Larkspur or Corte Madera, something really bad happens there, and which strains their general funds for other purposes. There's a sinkhole or whatever. You don't want to have any debate as to whether they suddenly going to come back into you and say, well, yeah, we'd spent over, but we consider that no. So anyway, you're going to iron that all out.
it's been
So
verified. Okay.
yeah. So anyway, lots of things went back and forth. The other major thing that happened. Here it was.
Can I ask one more thing while you're flipping through? Sorry, John.
No, go.
Now that the numbers have been, now that you've found that year one issue, from now, like, is that resolved so that when they're reported now, it will be corrected? Or is it resolved in the sense that when it's reported from now on, we just need to continue to allow for that?
So it's a good question. I look at it in two ways. First off, because the roll forward is now right, unless something else goes wrong, it should stay right. But more importantly, I think we had a good, robust conversation about this. I didn't want to get into all the details, but there's some other complexities of a small nature that are in here, including grants and how those other grants that are outside of revenues of the measure tax could be accounted for. There's some complexities that showed up on page 6. There's the last paragraph, got a bunch of small numbers in it. There's a way to make all those things a little cleaner. It's not my job to write her report, but we did have some conversation about it, and I think over the next year, it will likely result in a tighter process. Frankly, we could have delayed issuing a report, and we could have had another finding, but our sense was let's get this thing out, and it's going to be fixed. So I did mention at the board and executive committee meeting that things could have been better, and it was understood. So I think we fulfilled our fundamental obligation there, but I expect that in the next cycle things should be tighter. And every year it's getting better. I mean, if you look at year 2, things are still not all that great, and by the time we got to this 4th year, I mean, all the detailed data. Remember, the underlying data didn't tie before in the records, right? And now that everything's ties to a penny. And I would say that when we were done, there's a lot of little stuff. My wife asked me who I was employed by at one point, but it was all to the penny when it was all said and done. I mean, it all tied. So. Okay, next up is this whole question on page 6, the rollover schedule. So it was great to have a new set of eyes. Jim Wagner said, hey, I don't understand how this works. And I said, wow, we've done this way before. And then I realized, oh, you've got a really good point there. It is kind of confusing. So we did a couple of things. On if you went to page 6 of the document, I'd just give you 50,000 feet level. Remember, we had expenditures by each of the zones, and then we had another column which took the MWPA-wide numbers and the overhead and allocated it, pushed it back up to the zones and made another cross-coding of that. That's a lot of granular detail, which is not necessary. So we just went to the total of those 2 events, and then we disclosed it in words above. It says that included in the actual expenditures are $4.5 million of administrative costs and $1.7 million of shared costs. So we just made it cleaner from that perspective. The other thing we did was there was a average percentage number, which was kind of like meaningless because this is a did you hit it or did you not hit it? So it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It's a point in time measure. That's confusing. We just deleted that. And the final thing we did was in the case of the shortfall numbers, everything added nicely across the bottom of the page, but in actual fact, Novato exceeded 80%, which is great. In fact, I had mentioned at the meeting, I thought that Novato was very aggressively doing really good stuff with how they spent their money. But we shouldn't put Novato in as a negative shortfall because they've achieved their numbers. So the only purpose of the shortfall column is just to show for each of the 4, unfortunately, districts at this particular point in time that they are short. So we put NA next to Novato, and we said Novato has exceeded the 80% allocation. And then we left the bottom of that shortfall column without a footing because this is a better way to look at it. You have to look at each district separately, okay? And then the numbers did change a bit because of the roll forward elements, and I did point out that the annual report's incorrect, which came out earlier, and hopefully, I guess we'll find out in a few weeks whether you hit the June 30 numbers and you, in fact, have everybody at the exceeding the 80% number. Because remember, the 80% number is just a minimum, right? I mean, the point is that you can beat 120%, and in fact, if you're in a small area like West Marin, 120% is not a whole lot extra money, you know what I mean? And as long as you can justify what you're doing, then great, that's good. So kind of that's where we left that whole thing. And then of course the East Basin local numbers all changed also. So it was an effort, but everything is dusted and tidy. It all ties back and forth. When we're done with it, I walked toward Jim through it in a lot of detail, and she said, okay, I get it, it all ties. So anyway, that and the fact that goats didn't stay on the front page, made me comfortable with getting the report out. Goats.
John, when you're saying it's all tidied up, was it all tidied up in there, or you now have tidied it up?
The final report as issued is internally consistent.
Okay.
And it was internally consistent before, but it was just wrong. Okay. So then we went to a minimum and moderate stage where we started fixing stuff, but then it wasn't internally consistent, and then we realized, well, there's more to it than this. So anyway, there's a whole fall
Okay.
ball. But every number in here works together. The one number does not show up in here is the cumulative core expenditures from the beginning of time. But that number, which we have in our tables, ties to, it all ties. So it all makes accounting happy.
So quick question if I may. So there was an earlier version of the report that was then edited and the report was reissued with corrected numbers, is that right?
No, no. Totally understand why you asked that, but as the committee knows, we had gotten to the point of saying, yes, let's issue. So we had each of the elements of the report, which is lots of stuff in here, including all our observations and findings and all that stuff. And we, Jim had brought up the question, like, this table doesn't seem right. Can we work on this? And we collectively said, yes, you two, us two, have the authority to go ahead and finish that thing up and then issue the report. So that's what we did.
So there's an earlier version that was a draft, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, and to John's point, the financial portion is drafted by staff and then put into the document. So it was the staff work that was amended, not the COC work that was amended.
And we were given permission, we'd all agreed upon all our findings collectively. So we essentially said, yes, issue the report, fix these numbers. And that's exactly what we did. We issued the report, no changes of any of our findings, and it was published.
Okay. So bottom line is the report that I think you sent out the email with the attachment of the report itself. I think it was an email from you, but anyway, somewhere from Marin Wildfire, I got the email with this report attached,
That's it.
which is it. So
That's
it's fine. Okay. Just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I have all the right information.
No, yeah. If you had gone to the prior meeting and looked at the components of the prior meeting, it would have, you know,
Some
officers
different-
report, you know, financial data, each of the subjects in individual sections. And then we voted and say, yes, this is all good. And then now we've accumulated it and
Okay, good.
actually published it. So
Great.
I would just like to say thank you to John for your mind for numbers and your time crunching all of that into
A lot of
the
time.
report.
Yeah.
I found it very helpful.
good. All right, thanks. Okay, so that is that. Any other questions, Rebecca?
Not a question, but a comment. I wanted to agree with Pat that I thought your presentation of the report itself was really good. And not just the fact that, oh yeah, nice pat on the back for you. What happened in the meeting was, I'll use the word exciting after having sat in on a lot of these over the last 5 to 6 years. What happened in this meeting that was so different is your presentation caused comments from board members. Rarely does the COC report get anything other than a nice job, thank you very much. We appreciate it, we accept it, yay. Not at all what happened in this meeting. Not only did we get people asking questions and board members making comments, but we believe, Mark and I believe, every single person who was, every single board member that was there in the meeting spoke up and said something about here's what's going on, or here, yes, we agree, or, and that has never happened that I know of. So however, John, you prepared to do this was probably painful, but I think we ought to make it in the future, chairperson should look at your presentation on video to see how it went and the result of it, because it was really good. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, I really felt there was an opportunity to continue some of the dialogue that we've had collectively about the responsibilities, particularly with regards to the local and DSpace expenditures and how the money is just not given to the local group. We were able to emphasize that both in terms of our conversation about what the risks were, how we felt the risks were, and then they had to actually like get into collectively making decisions about expenditure processes. And Barbara Kohler was the one who kicked it out at the start, which was great. I knew her back from when I was serving as a council member, and yeah, it was good. It was a good conversation. I think that it's an effective organization, and I guess it would bring us to what is our next topic, which is our approach to the next fiscal year's item, I threw out some ideas out, but let me frame it with a little start, okay? So a number of us have been in the IG lately, writing articles, right? I mean, I got all 4 of them here. And within those articles was a level of conversation around, are COCs effective, right? Did they do anything? And, you know, I've always, and there was some conversation for the few people I've never met who were on prior in the first 2 years, all they do is tie up the financial information. And I actually at the meeting kind of chuckled about that, because the one thing we have not done is we have not tied up the financial information because the audit's not done yet, right? Just as a slight backup, the audited financials, the financial section, which was written by staff, was put together by Larry Chu previously, one of our former board members. He's a fantastic guy. We worked together on a number of things together over the years. And we said, whoa, this is not our job to do this. It should be done by staff. And more importantly, the CPA audited financial statements should have all these numbers in it, right? And we worked with the CPA firm, and they saw the suggestions that I had made about what the footnote should say, so that we're not auditors. That's not what we're doing, right? The audited, the making sure the financials are accurate is a function of management and then of the CPA. What we do is we look over it and say, okay, those numbers all tie, but more importantly, they follow our rubric, right? It is 60%, it is 20%, it is 20%. And those items that sit inside those categories, in fact, do what they say they should be doing, right? Legitimacy. Yeah, and we can also comment about, you know, efficiency, and should you look into this and should you look into that. So there's been this debate that existed within this group for years now, that I see it as, okay, there's financial stuff that you have to do, and financial information is a byproduct of every organization, you know, and on the other end is board decisions, and we do not do board decisions. And so to clarify that, if there are 2 things that are both effective, 2 proposals that are both effective for use of a particular proceed, say, let's make it core. We do not say you should have picked this one instead of that one. What we say is the one you picked is inside the lines of what is expected by the taxpayers, right? So that's kind of what we do. And it has been interesting to see all these things in the paper. But today, as we have our conversation, if there are things, I just had a couple ideas, but everything's on the table at this particular point in terms of what we can do as we approach those 3 categories. So maybe I'll briefly put out what, I printed something and I forgot to pick it off my printer.
Do you want? What did you print?
Nothing that you had.
Nothing I have.
No, darn it. Shoot. Okay. Darn it. I spent all this time putting together an Excel spreadsheet, and I hate doing Excel spreadsheets.
Would you like for me to print a copy of it?
Well, I don't have it. I don't think it's, maybe, I don't think I can get it this way. Darn it. No.
Maybe you could ask AI to say, if John.
No, I can pretty much remember how I did it. So, all right, let me just walk you through. So I was going to hand you some numbers. I'm frustrated with myself. Darn it. Okay, well, anyway. So let's walk through some suggestions that I had for each. Let's do it category by category so that all of us can weigh in each of the categories and what our thoughts are. And I had this very short thing, right? So let's do core first, right? So I said in the correspondence, as you know, we examined the lowest 1/3 of projects last cycle, and reviewed all projects for anomalies the year before. So the first year we read all of them. 2 years ago we read all of them and then said, do these look okay, right? And then last year we said, let's take the lowest 1/3 of them and tear them open and specifically look at all the supporting invoices. Not so much from an audit perspective, but from a perspective is, does all this stuff look right? Does it seem like it's within the categories, appropriate categories? And we particularly focused on employee payroll costs. So for this next cycle, my suggestion is the trickiest thing in core is, okay, a project is decided, lots of eyeballs look at it, right? And then you get bills from vendors for your goats, right? But then you also have costs that are represent staff time, which is charged to projects. They could be 100%, or they could be a percentage of something. And to me, that has a higher level of exposure. It is correct that within the core budget thing, there's now a specific percentage of payroll by that is anything that's reimbursed within core projects, right?
Oh, that moving forward from now on.
Yeah, moving forward, as a function of our recommendation in the last cycle. So beginning with this next, was that going to make it for this year? Our current cycle, ending this June?
We might find a way to be able to do that.
Okay, all right. So I would suggest that one thing we could consider for core is to just look particularly at reimbursements of costs of employees of the 17 jurisdictions. It's just one suggestion. And I would say examine whether there is a good written evidence of MWPA inquiry to confirm the percentage of time charged is a reasonable recovery of jurisdictions' employee costs that are MWPA project benefits. So that's one idea. We can do other things too. So let me open up to the floor. And by the way, Rebecca, you want to fill in any general comments in the beginning about, you know, what I just talked about in terms of where our responsibilities lie and where they don't lie?
No, I think you're, well, yes, and let me say it differently.
Can't quite hear.
What I would like us to think about as we are looking at what we can do is, are we in any way restricting ourselves to just look at money, or just look at, does the project fit into one of the buckets? Is there anything else about projects that we should be thinking about? Like, for example, if we're representing for example, I'm representing Novato. As a Novato resident, is there anything that Novato did that I don't think I like paying for? Do we want to look at it that way, or do we not? Is that not part of our job? We talked about that in the very beginning of this organization, but I don't know that we ever really answered that question. So I would say maybe now is another good time to look at it and say, do we want to look at it as we represent the public? Is the public, are we as a member of the public concerned about how the money's being spent, or should we not think about that at all?
So my reaction to that is there's two elements to that. One element is whether, whether it is inside or outside of the scope of the document. A second, which I think is appropriate. A second level of it could be, as an example, my recommendations on DSpace we'll get into in a minute, surround, is there adequate information given to the decision makers to make a good decision about a topic, right? An example of that was our question about, I would say the ranger thing falls into the category of is, should we be paying for this or not? And then secondarily, what level of data do you have that surrounds that? I think those are all totally inside the ballpark. If you don't like, if we, for instance, don't like demonstration gardens, as an example, just off the top of my head, and but demonstration gardens are within the confines of the measure, I don't think we can say, no, don't do those gardens, that's dumb. But we can say, well, if you've done those gardens, make sure you've got a display thing that says what the benefits are. So it's a little nuanced, Steve, but that's how I see our scope. I think we have lots of power. And as you'll see in DSpace, my suggestions in DSpace, that I'm suggesting, again, let me just do the DSpace thing and tell you what I'm trying to tell you about, and then maybe that'll make things a little easier. I had this great numerical example, and I just didn't bring it, but I'll try to do it at 50,000 feet. So can I just do DSpace for a second, and we'll come back to the conversation? So on DSpace, I noticed that, so you got your three different groups that are doing DSpace, right? You've got DSA, and you've got the two cities, and one of the components that comes from that is they use a capitated basis. So they say, if we look at 50 houses and it costs us $50,000 and it's $1,000 a house or whatever numbers are.
But I think that applies only to the Alliance, right?
No, it also applies to the others too. Because essentially it does the same thing, because if it's just, well, for San Rafael, which also has Marin Wood, they allocate their costs based on how many Marin Woods versus how many San Rafael. So that's essentially the same thing. And Nevada is 100% just Nevada, I think. But essentially they all do it the same way at the big picture, okay? So, and what I wrote was not quite right. I was going down the path of value being a function of tax revenues, which is a function of the value per house, right? That's because I'm a city former council member, that's the way we all thought. What we do here is in Marin Wildfire, I realized when I read the document more carefully, we charge 10 cents a square foot. Okay, so that's a square foot measure. So what I was trying to do per year. Yeah, so what I was trying to do with this numerical example, which is so clear and great, which is sitting on my printer at home, is that if we have two cities that have exactly the same number of houses, okay, and one city has an average house that's 2,000 square feet, and another city has an average house that is 5,000 square feet, the 5,000 square foot community will generate more revenue than the 2,000 square foot entity will. And both entities, if they both look at the same number of houses, I had this worked out so great. In the case of the entity that had the 2,000 square foot houses, you could basically spend all your money. But the entity which had 5,000 square foot houses would have a big rollover, right? Because they would have more revenues per house and the cost per inspection is the same.
But the inspections take longer.
That's not how it works. They walk around the building.
To walk around 5,000 feet than
Yeah, well, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And granted, that's a thing to pursue. But what I was suggesting there is not for us to be board members. This is why I wanted to kind of get this into our conversation. Not for us to be board members and solve the problem, but for us to say, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? And do you realize that unless you get on it, that you're going to have some cities which will accumulate big rollovers if you haven't dealt with it? I don't know the answer to the question as to whether they dealt with it or not. So we asked the question, have you already studied this and what have you concluded? If you have not studied it, then we can make a recommendation, you should study it. And that's the distinction I'm trying to make, that we're not the board, but we do have broad powers in terms of what we can recommend. That's why I want to kind of cover that
Can I ask you a
now.
question? And this might just be an example, so
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep down the
Yeah.
example if it's just offered as an example. But on that piece, I mean, the other thing that I worry about focusing on is sort of the equality across parcels or equality across towns, as opposed to what we're ultimately aiming for, which is decreased vulnerability overall.
Mm-hmm.
And risk is not spread equally across towns or across houses anyway. And I'm not saying that it solves it to not look at it, but I also worry that if we're looking at it on a like percentage basis by parcel or by square foot or by revenues, we're not focused on the actual decrease in vulnerability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that there's a second question which deals with, okay, how you decide who you look at first and how much time do you spend, or what percentage of overall houses do you look at? Another suggestion I had was that each of the three organizations are doing things slightly differently, and it's in the written document. And I had a question about, okay, what did we learn from that? Because there's different costs associated with that. There's also different benefits associated with that. And again, I would say our role is to ask the question, have you looked at those things and have you learned anything? And are you comfortable that all three approaches are relevant, or eventually will one come out to be a better one and maybe you should move the other two to the approach of the one, or should you keep them all separate? You know, so that was actually something I thought it would be good for us to study. And again, my distinction is we're not studying it like board members saying, I want to answer this question so I can make a policy decision. Our question is, are you doing it? And if you're not doing it, then you should do it. And that's, I'm trying to be nuanced about, I spent a lot of time doing governance stuff in my life, so it's something I kind of have a particular view on. But I think that those are two things I would suggest that we do in the D space, is look at both of those questions, and just ask them, hey, have you already done it? They might have already done it. I mean, there's a lot of, they're very deep, and the detail of information they have is highly impressive. And I know that their team is looking at it very carefully. So they may have already done this, and then we can say, okay, we asked this question, you did it, that's great. Or we ask this question and then say, oh, that's a good idea, we'll do that, and we'll make our own decision later. So those are the kind of things I think we have the ability to do. And I kind of jumped out ahead because I wanted to respond to Rebecca's question about what we should or shouldn't be doing. So Rebecca, does that make sense to you?
Yes, and I do think as we're going through these, all I'm suggesting is that we think about which things do we want to be doing and which things should we be doing, and are we missing anything so far?
Good.
Have we looked at everything we could have been looking at over the last four reports?
So let's go back and just go through let's start with core again and say, so I made one suggestion on core. Are there other suggestions about things we could do with regards to a review of core this next cycle? And since we've gone several different places, review where we were, we said 2 years ago, we looked at all of them, we read everything. Last year, we looked at the lower third numerically. And my suggestion for this year is let's look specifically at reimbursements of employee efforts within the jurisdictions. And that could be one of several things we do, but I think that's worth doing.
Yeah, I have a question about that. It sounds like shifting from year to year and thinking about different things helps with accountability because we're looking at different things.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any value to looking at the same thing consistently year to year for like a longitudinal answer? Do we lose by shifting around every year in what we're looking at? Do we lose anything? And I think you do this or have done this a lot, so I understand if the answer is no, but is there anything that we lose by not just looking at the same thing?
So for local, I'm suggesting we do exactly what we did last year. So I think nothing's right or wrong, right? So yeah. So and we can think more about this. That's why I wanted to put this out in writing ahead of time, just to be one of the, how many is there now? 7 of 8 of us, to put suggestions out there. And once we form our teams, the individual teams can further decide on an approach, but I wanted to at least put that out in the core area. And I don't want to belabor this, are there any other general suggestions about core at this point, or should we move on to local?
I think with the knowledge that the teams can take this or not take this.
Right.
That these are, thank you for doing all this mental work and.
Yeah. And Rebecca, to the extent something else jumps into your mind, like, oh, we should be doing this, let's put it out on the table. So, I just want to re-emphasize that we have a broad authority, and as long as we stay inside of the lines on both sides, then it makes sense. And hopefully we won't see any more articles on the IJ. So.
And just a tiny little comment that the articles in the letters in the IJ weren't specifically about MWPA. I mean, WPA came up because a letter referred to MWPA, and so a response referred to MWPA. But there are, 120 COs, not that many, but 50 or however many COCs there are. We're only one of them, and oh, by the way, we are, without a doubt, the most active, the most intelligent, the most
beautiful, the best looking.
Well, I would say that this is one of the most complicated things that goes on in the county in terms of potential for abuse, with 17 different agencies spending money in 3 different categories. holy moly, this, if anyone needs one, this is one.
Yeah.
That's why it kind of amused me that this was being put out as a target, when I thought we've done really good work.
Yeah.
And we can say we made changes as a result of being here, but anyway, okay.
And not to mention one of the
Oh my
newest.
gosh, I
Yeah.
totally have to look up this letter.
Well, I think, I'm not sure that I entirely understand the third one, but I think that if we're gonna get through the agenda today and knowing that people can discuss these when they get into smaller groups, I think.
Good.
Thank you for all your work on this.
I did want to add one nuance for your D-space idea, is that our tax isn't just on private properties or on residences, it's also on commercial.
Yeah.
So, and also for multifamily dwellings, it's a price per
Yeah,
dwelling,
right.
per apartment.
Right.
And so the ratio of commercial to residential throws those numbers off in a big way.
Yeah, I know, right. But I'm just saying in the fundamental, I didn't want to make my examples so complicated, but at a fundamental level, there's a difference within your jurisdictions with regards to cumulative spend thus far. You can see that when you go down the D-space cumulative rollovers. Some people have got big ones, some people have got little ones. And it just, I think it's worth pursuing, because if there is a particular town that is gonna be in a cumulative rollover, if you look at the words of the initiative, the words are pretty flexible. So they can spend that on other defensible space efforts, as long as everyone knows, oh, we're gonna by nature, by the way this thing is structured, we're not gonna burn all our money on inspections. But in other jurisdictions, yeah, we're probably gonna burn almost all of our money on inspections. Different cities have different conditions. Then are we reacting and spending the taxpayers' money in the most, to get it all out there, so we don't come to the end of year 10 and go, holy moly, that one's got a 50%, half the money hasn't been spent. So that's just something to pursue. And once we look into it, we may find out, oh, there's nothing here, but I just think it's something worth looking into, so. Okay, next up is local, and what we do in local is we look at 5 each year, the last 2 years, right? There's 17, so we've looked at 10 now, so there's 7 left. And what we did in local is had a series of questions. Rebecca can remember them by heart because she took care of all of them. I thought that was an effective way to look at local. I didn't have any alternative suggestions. Once the local team forms, maybe there's other things they can come up with, but are there other thoughts from the floor with things we can do instead of or in addition to with regards to the local efforts?
I like the thought of having one of them be consistent from year to year.
Okie dokie. All right, done. Okay. And again, local can change. Okay, so last we get is into D-space, and I've already covered my 2 thoughts. One deals with this question of structural rollover and whether there is opportunities to look into that further. And then the second question is, okay, you got 3 different teams. Have we learned anything from that? Have they learned, if they have learned anything and they passed it on, great. And if they haven't, then maybe they should look into it. So those are my thoughts on D-space. There may be others' thoughts on D-space.
I like that third one.
Okay.
Since there are 3 teams, have they learned anything that they can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea to have it.
Yeah.
Things done. It's federalism, right? So okay. So if there are no further comments at this juncture, then let's move into who's on what team, right?
Can I ask a question about something that kind of became clear to me when I got nominated for vice chair? There are 2 empty seats on this committee.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, they're gonna remain empty unless
You can comment on that.
we recruit.
I'm still working on it.
So my question is this something that we should tackle as a committee and try to address this year? And is this a time to talk about it, or what is the context of kind of addressing that? Because it would be nice if we had a full 9 members to draw from, so ignorant and inexperienced people don't have to be vice chairs until they're not ignorant and inexperienced anymore.
You seem pretty sharp to me based on the questions you asked in the first couple of weeks, so Yeah, we originally were 9. We had 3 tracks. And once we had 4 tracks, once was finance, and we said we don't need to do that anymore. Then we went down. We had 3 tracks, and it was 3, and then things blew up, and it turned out that some of us had to do 2 tracks. But anyway, so where are we? Who are the 2 open spots at this point?
The open spots are community-based organizations and the taxpayer organization.
I think
Okay.
one of those may be problematic.
I'm still continuing my efforts. In fact, I have it on my calendar to try to recruit one soon. But what I did to help prepare for this, though, was, and I dug through my notes, but I'm also going to ask you guys to fact check me, especially Jenny. Your first year on board, which group did you work on? Do you remember?
I think I was community-based organization.
No. I
Oh,
mean,
sorry,
were
sorry.
you
Oh, sorry.
for the report? Were you local, core, or D
Oh,
space
sorry,
the first year?
D-Space. I've been D-Space twice.
So I wanted to track where people have been. Larry, and refresh my memory what groups you have been with.
Yeah, I think I was local and I was also D-Space. Yeah.
So D space for first time.
Yeah, D-Space.
Someone else is off.
Well, someone did core. Right, so. Is Rebecca on core?
Rebecca was on core, so I got that.
Okay, and then obviously Kingston did core, and then when things kind of collapsed because both of the people on core went away, then it was, who did it, me and you? Who did
The
core?
original four, it was
Kingston was supposed to do it with the other guy who was here and gone,
Spencer, yeah.
right? And then when they dropped out, I got
Yeah.
involved, and who else got involved on the core?
You actually handled it as a full committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we all did it, okay,
Yes.
all right.
So that's why you don't see, except for Rebecca being on core the first time, you don't see, this is for the last 2 years. I wasn't
Yeah.
able to get
That's
information far enough that back, but so these are the last 2 years, and that's why you don't have anyone in core, because you all did core.
Okay, yeah. And part of the things about this is that a standing committee, if you vote the same people all the time, then it becomes Brown Act. And it's just, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So we mix things up. It also gives us a chance to do something different anyway. You get different eyeballs on things, they see things differently. So the question is, if we have 7 people,
Mhm.
and we have 3 groups. So I guess they should be groups of 2, and then maybe one have 3.
Or you could do groups of 3, and some people will have 2 assignments, some people, 1 person won't. I think it would work if that's right now. But
Let's see. So if it's groups of 3, that means there are 9 spots, and there are 7 people, right?
So that means,
Is it easier to do groups of 2 just for scheduling instead of groups of 3? I mean, is there?
2 groups of 2 and 1 group of 3?
That means 2 groups only have to, just calendars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about what's available when, based on our approach.
Yeah,
Right?
how soon
Because
can we start?
exactly, and how much do we need them to have their books closed before we can do our thing, right? So like on local, let's think through local. So local is you just getting all the databases, when do you get your data for the 4th quarter? Or is everything,
September 30.
okay, so by September 30, the books will be closed.
That's the goal.
Okay, so,
but to me, the 3 work plan committees, which is what we're talking about,
Mhm.
they don't need the books to be closed because they're not, I know I appreciate you're looking at all the money, but they can already be looking at, does this fit with what Measure C and the JPA agreement say?
so I sort of agree. That's why I was trying to pursue it. So within local, we answered 4 questions, as I recall. Well, it's not here in the report. So in local, we answered, let's see. There's another goat.
We got lots of your goats in
That's
there.
just a joke. Okay, so in local, we answered 4 questions. Project descriptions appear to adhere to the JPA agreement and ordinance. We can do that earlier, right? Provide adequate records to support a higher level of service. We can't do that yet, but hopefully we'll be able to do that by sometime soon. Personal costs are allocated to wildfire prevention efforts only. That would mean that we'd want to know what they're spending their money on. So do you have the 9-month numbers? What do you get on local for expenditures?
You get the annual.
Only at the end, okay. The sum of cumulative revenues of finished road projects agreed in database. So basically for local, we really can't start until September. Okay, so let's go back to core, because I agree with you, the sum should be done earlier, okay? So what we're doing in core is we want to particularly dive into any personnel costs. All right, that's what we just decided. So when do you have 9 months data on core?
Yes.
So you have 9-month data on core, so we could go into the core projects and see, because it's all coded and all that stuff, you could see where there are personnel reimbursements for the first 9 months.
However, most of the agencies will, or not most, some of the agencies will just send us one invoice at the end.
September.
No, the core, we can close out core faster than we can close out that. So actually we can get that easily in July or August.
Okay, and if you went through the core, you could do the ones that are giving you interim billings first and the ones that give you a single billing later. So core could start earlier. That's why I'm pursuing these to, right? Okay.
Could start earlier, but possibly not finish until the end of August.
Yeah, but at least we get started earlier, right? So, and then you've got the D space, and those are technical questions about what's been done. So you know what's done. Have you looked into these questions yet?
D-space?
In D space?
Do you mean the lessons learned
Yes.
among the different approaches?
Right, and then the question of, have you already considered the fact that you're gonna have structural differences in expenditure speed?
Not in regard to what you're talking about as far as cost spend per average square footage of the house, or no, we have not done that.
Okay, so
That could be a short part of the report.
yeah, exactly.
Recommendation for next year.
Right, so that might just be 2 people on that one, right? So that's kind of why I'm thinking through both the speed and the, right? So, I mean, maybe it makes sense to put 2 people on D space, because we can do that early, and we can just, what's her woman's name who's the guru on D space? Your leader?
Kathleen.
Kathleen.
Kathleen, yeah, she was in her, at her prior meeting. So maybe 2 of us can dialogue with her and come to some conclusions about that and write that up, right?
Except when talking to Kathleen, you're only gonna get the alliance point of view.
Oh, she's the SA, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's.
But that's okay, then
Yeah.
we can reach out to, well, actually, our question is kind of,
She can tell you who to reach out to in the other 2 places.
well, yeah, well, one of our questions is simply lessons learned at the top, so that has to be within you guys, right? And and the short answer is you haven't done it yet.
No, the lessons, I thought you were talking, no, not on the square footage, yes, on approaches.
Good, okay, well, good, fine. So on approaches, would she be the one to talk about approaches?
Start with me and then
Okay, sounds good, okay.
focus down.
Okay, so I don't want to do the whole broad job right now. So it looks like we could do that group fairly soon.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so we need 2 volunteers for that. I'd like to be one of those 2.
Okay. And I'll do it live right here. So Southern Marin, Macaulay, local. Oh, D space.
These,
Duh.
okay.
Okay.
And as far as core is concerned, we said we're gonna have to, we can do that in 2 chunks. We can start early for the ones that have data through 9 months and then come back later and pick up others who don't get in until December. So core, do you think that's a heavy lift or a smaller lift? It's basically gonna be, do you have data to support what each person did? And, that is convincing that they're either 100% or they're 50% or whatever it is aligned with what our work is, right?
That won't be tough.
Oh, good, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so who wants to work on core?
Well, I mean, looking at this, Pat, did I have it right that you did D space 2 times in a row?
Yeah.
So perhaps core?
Yeah, core would be fine.
Okay. And then this is gonna be a funny way to look at it, Jenny. but you did do D-Space 2 years in a row, so it'd be good to get you off of D-Space. But you also talked about consistency, so.
No, I'm glad it's going to be consistent. It doesn't need to be me doing it.
Do you have a preference between local or core?
I mean, no, put me wherever is most.
Okay. Jim, do you have a preference?
I'd like to do D-Space.
There you go.
Okay, so I got 2 on D-Space, that's good.
Um,
So on core, we really want to have kind of, you have to like be willing to look into the particular details of payroll and job description and be satisfied that the job description is adequate to support the payroll efforts. For instance, if you look at Rangers, you'd say, I go out and do my Ranger stuff, right? You'd have to be able to tear that open and say, wait a minute, that may not be enough, you know? And so, you know, Larry, does that fit your cup of tea or?
I'm open.
Okay, maybe put Larry on core?
John, I think I missed something here. You're talking as if the only thing we're looking at is personnel?
That was what I was suggesting, but any other option that is of interest of the committee to look at would be cool, right? I mean, that was just one idea. And
Because there aren't very many that are just personnel, I don't
no,
think.
that have personnel within the cost recovery.
Right.
So if it's personnel plus vendors and everyone else has already looked at it and said it's a good project, then I'm just saying, okay, let's just specifically focus on the employee part, because that would be, to me, the one for which there could be the most abuse, potential abuse, you know? Go ahead.
So then it's not whether it's a project that says we're going to use all this money for a D-Space inspector. What we're also looking at then is within the expenses, are any of those expenses for somebody on their staff to be the project person or be the guy that goes out and does the work? And if so, how much of their job is expended towards this project?
Yeah, is it convincing to us as the taxpayer advocate that if a core project has 20% of its time with an employee in, pick a city, I don't want to be a picky person, let's say Santa Fe, Nevada, whatever, it's called Santa Fe. And are we convinced that Santa Fe is just not finding a place to reimburse that person and using some of our money when in fact their effort doesn't seem to be as aligned to whatever the core project is necessary? So that's what we would look for.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
And it could be, and Rebecca, there could be 4 other things we could do in core. It was just one idea.
No, yeah, I got that. It was just that I was stuck on it. If we were looking at the expense of a person, it was if that whole project was for a person. And there are those, but probably not enough to look at. Anyway, go ahead.
So for instance, on one of the big major fuel breaks, right? The one of those major fuel breaks is what there's one in
Nevada.
There's one in, is there in the Nevada fuel break, is somebody up in Nevada staff being reimbursed for efforts that, you know, is 50% of their salary, and you got to go, wait a minute, all that stuff's being done by somebody else. What are you doing for your 50%? And just answer the question. I'm not biased to say it's right or wrong. Just let's make sure that there's adequate records at MWPA that MWPA is looking into this. And again, it's not just, I know that person and they're cool. It's what's written down. What evidence is there would make the taxpayer convinced that we're looking into this stuff carefully.
Got it.
I'm gonna go for local.
Okay.
Need one.
Sure, that's fine.
I really love the lessons learned exchanged across
Yeah.
the piece and would be excited to learn about that.
Okay, so who else wants to work on core?
I mean, you can plug me in wherever. It's going to be new,
Right.
you know, for whatever position I end up.
You get what I'm trying to get at?
which of these committees do you think we need 3?
Well, my thought on that was that the budget is larger for core, and that might be a justification for having 3 on that one.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because our logic has been thus far from the risk analysis perspective, this core's got so many eyes on it, the board of Right. But a dozen people, and you got tech committee, and you got, there's all these eyeballs looking at this thing. And there's a beauty that everyone's fighting for the same bucket of money, right?
Well,
And that makes you have to defend the projects as compared to local, when you go, here you go, you get your 20% because that's your tax revenue. So we view local as being higher risk than core fundamentally.
I'll just pose to Scott that I think core is a good place to start when you're new into the organization, because you do get to look at the biggest chunk of money that's
Sure.
going toward, and you, generally speaking, are looking at the bigger projects.
And then if you don't mind, Larry, since you haven't done core before, plug you in at core.
Core or local, either one is fine with me.
Okay.
Rebecca, you good with local?
Actually, I did local ones.
Oh my God. Can't we come up with a fourth choice?
Oh, you did local last year, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, local's okay.
Okay. That gets consistency in the local group.
Wait a minute. Let me say that differently, because we're starting a new year. I couldn't be more excited. Yes.
There
please
you go.
be on local.
Rebecca, we're gonna have so much fun.
We are.
And while I have the spreadsheet up and we're talking about what you guys are doing next year, perhaps it's a good time to talk about
Committee observation.
committee observations.
So did we
Well,
get,
let's finish
did we
this
get through
first.
that?
No, we're not done yet. Let's finish this up. So, sorry. So taxpayers vacant, oh, maybe we're done. Hold on, taxpayers vacant.
We're done.
Okay, we're done. I apologize. So we've got, just make sure I caught up. I got 3 on core, I got 2 on D space, and I've got 2 on local. Okay, that's it. Okay, good.
Could we try putting Theo on one of them? That doesn't work. That was just a, please continue on, John.
Okay, all right. So now we're gonna talk about committees a little bit and
Mhm.
see who looks at what, right? Okay, so do we have that? Is that on another spreadsheet or do we?
Sure.
So I've been operations.
Your operations?
I have been, yeah.
And I have been bored. And I don't want to do board anymore.
I had you as board and exec. Is that correct, or just board?
Board and exec.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I always looked at operations,
And then-
but I don't think I've ever officially been operations.
And Rebecca, I had you as operations. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So,
So first off, a question. We always had 2 people on each committee, and then previously, and then I kind of half forget, and then, Kingston would have already done it and said, okay, cool, thanks. And then several of you guys, you watch everything, right? Because you're like into it, right? So do we have to have does everyone need to be assigned something if we know that some of you are gonna be on operations and core for operations and exec?
I think everybody needs to have something,
Okay.
and I don't think you can count on those of us who often watch them all, that I may have a day when I don't watch operations, so it would be nice to know that somebody is.
So what do we have at this point? Jim is open. I'm happy to stay on finance. Jim, is there one you particularly want to work on?
I think somebody suggested once that operations is a good place to start because is that the one that's kind of,
fire chiefs and town managers.
let me rephrase the question. What would be a good place for me to start? Observing, kind of to get the big picture.
The board, no?
I think I
Or
almost,
exec committee.
Or the executive.
Well, let me ask a question about board and exec, because they both cover the same thing.
Yeah.
They're both, shouldn't you watch both?
no, they're not necessarily the same,
Thank you.
because
Okay.
I frequently watch them both.
I'm asking.
We
so-
we tend to take a deeper dive into exec.
Right.
And just to clarify, these are all recorded, right? I mean,
Yes,
I've
absolutely.
seen these on recordings,
Yeah,
so
right.
You can watch
even
them
if
in
you're not
1.5
free,
time.
yeah,
Right.
So
I've done
in-
that.
In between your Netflix.
It's very effective.
And if you forget until the morning of, you can look it up in the morning of, which is what I've done.
Well, I think I almost need operations because I've done the others.
Okay.
So we have two in operations, is that what's been done?
Yep.
Okay,
Well, I mean, we only have 3 committees to watch,
okay.
Yeah, so
4 committees to watch. So
You have board exec, you've got
you didn't put finance.
finance.
In your list.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
You
In
can
the list you sent out, but you didn't have.
I didn't send the
finance.
list out.
Thought you did.
Put me down for
Somewhere
executive.
there was something that said finance.
Except for Larry?
But I try to go to the majority of them.
Jim, I'm thinking about your question, and I think operations. Well, there's already 2 there. Board.
Okay.
That'll be a good place.
Same for me. I mean, where to start, you know?
Well, it would be good to have a Jim and Scott split up. So, Rebecca, do you have a preference between board and exec?
No, I don't care.
So let's do board for you there, and then Scott, exec.
Okay.
That's it?
I think so.
Okay, done and dusted. All right, good.
And before you move on from that, discussion about, for example, I'll be leaving, term ends in December.
Right.
Do we want to just say whoever replaces me takes my spot with Jenny on local and takes my spot observing whichever one I was, board?
Maybe we'll be done by then.
That's what I'm hoping.
I'm hoping we're done.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're done.
I
Yeah,
love your attitude, Jenny. Perfect.
October 1st, we're done.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
Wishful thinking.
I'm with you on that.
Hopefully. you're right.
So let's figure it out,
I'll let it slip by a couple weeks.
because you also gotta find new people, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's productive to just say, let's just get ourselves through December. So.
Okay.
All right, good. So
Pat, you're
that's,
gonna be the last one standing of the original board, COC.
I think I am.
You are.
okay, so now after that is, we've slipped into the when's our meetings, when should our next meetings happen?
Mhm.
So, so we have our subcommittees assigned. When do we have to meet collectively again? I don't think we want to wait for a really long time. I don't think we necessarily have to meet as a group while we're letting the subcommittees get going, right? So,
September, June, July, August.
I don't think we need to wait that long.
well, why?
I don't know. It just feels like.
I mean, we can always call a meeting, but.
That is
you
correct.
can
Our
say-
new chair can call a meeting, right? But I mean, if we get going, and as a chair, you want to see how things are going and people actually getting some progress made. But if we don't have any findings, there's nothing for us to talk about,
Right.
right? Because when we next meet, we would want to say, okay, 2 things have happened. The core team has found some brilliant additional things to look at besides the dumb idea I came up with. And they've already decided to do that, which they have the ability to do, and it lets the rest of us know about it. And these are our findings today. So I don't think there's much for us to do until people dove in for a bit and got some work done. Right? Because the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time on things, lots of things, right? And I think we've got all those things like sorted at this point. So
Yeah.
now let's just get the work
Sure.
done. Let's get the work done. Yeah, exactly.
Mark, will you send out that list, that spreadsheet that shows?
So you proposed September. I think that's a pretty good idea.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it, looking at it.
Is there, we get drafts by then, ready to circulate?
Wouldn't that be
That
cool?
meeting?
I'm, by the way, I haven't gone home with September in Europe, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We still have meeting.
As far as,
Hi, Craig.
Jenny, what you just talked about with the drafts, obviously, there's gonna be a product down the road at some point, and it would be helpful, I think, for the person in my position, just starting out to maybe see what was done last time.
I think that's on our agenda.
That's it, that's
We're
it.
about- Yep. And
Now,
that,
he
So,
has the
all
whole
right.
thing printed in color.
Yeah,
So this is the end product that we're
correct.
shooting for. Okay, good. Well, then that tells me what I need.
and we have a template this year.
That's our next topic,
Yes,
I
that
think.
we're about to
Right,
talk
but there's no
about.
other, it's not like you do big pile of stuff and then you
That
do
gets
this.
rolled
It's,
down.
this is it.
Okay,
So we're a working team and our product is our report.
That's why
Okay,
I'm
so
so
this is a-
confident we could have it done by
great.
We'll see.
I've got a scanner at home.
So we proposing September.
So we're,
I will not be around in September. We're out of the country,
You know,
but that's okay. All right, so, I mean, you could do it August or you could do it September.
we can
and I'll-
always call in August if.
If enough
so-
progress has been made, yeah.
Right, so I think let's just tentatively say September, and if August needs to be met. The problem with August is several of us might be away, of course,
Right.
so we'll see.
Our chair can figure that out.
I mean, we could aim for that last week in August if you would not be gone yet, and that's essentially the
that's an
same
idea.
time of year.
That is true, yeah, we
Or
leave,
back
yeah, we leave.
That's actually an idea too.
Are you still around the last?
Yes,
week
I
of
am around
August?
last week of August.
That seems to make sense, because isn't
Thank
that
you,
when the
Chair.
Because we are the
meeting
last, we are the last,
naturally-
that is true, yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like this is an early win. Rebecca,
Yeah.
last week of August, is that good for you?
I think so, yeah.
which is basically the same thing, it's just John will read it.
Mark, what about you?
Last week of August?
To me, that makes sense, because if you wait till September, it's gonna be the last week of September.
Yeah, and the meeting would be the 24th September, and I arrive back to San Francisco on the 25th.
August 27th.
I'll be flapping my wings to Hawaii unless you guys want to do it on a Tuesday.
I'm fine with the Tuesday, but
Is
I'd
it always
also
the
like to
same
come
day
to
of the week?
Hawaii and
Yeah.
be there.
It's the fourth week on Wednesday. yeah.
Can we
Will the
come with you, Mark?
MWPA pay, yeah, can we use COLA?
Won't you miss us too much?
Sure, go ahead and try to get that one by the sea.
Okay. So let's lock in on the proposal
Tuesday.
before us is the 27th of August.
But
26.
26th, we'd be mixing it up because Mark's.
Cause
gonna
you're
be
here,
gone on
Mark,
the
on the 26th.
Oh, you want to do it on 26th? It's okay with me.
Issues
It's
open
a
on
Tuesday.
Right.
26th. Yes,
Okay, I'm just trying to move this along. Do you want to make it August 26th?
yes.
All right, all those, is there a motion?
I move August 26th for our next meeting,
And subject to an earlier meeting at the chair side.
if needed, exactly.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye,
I
and we'll keep the same hour, I assume.
know, we gotta do this.
So-
All right.
Can you, just for the record, Chair, can you state exactly what the motion is for?
Oh, Chair, yeah, so I propose that the next time we get together would either be August 26th, or an earlier date if sufficient progress has been made with regards to each subcommittee's work that would make it worthwhile for us to meet.
And that was a motion, you moved, and a second by,
I think I second.
oh, apologies, movement by Larry Minikis with a second from Scott Pinsky. Okay, for the vote, Rebecca Suggs,
Yes,
Pat Randolph,
Yes,
Larry Minikis,
Yes,
Jim Wagner,
Aye.
Scott Pinsky,
Yes.
Jenny Biggs,
Yes.
John McCauley.
Yes.
And that is a unanimous vote, motion carries.
Okay, next item is the report outline and style guide. I get to learn about Oxford commas, is that what it was?
you get to learn about
Well,
Oxford
yeah,
commas.
Apparently that's for discussion, so.
Oxford Commons.
I just to sort of tee us up on this one, part of the transaction cost with this report every year is pulling all of the information together. So in the interest of just being more efficient and having consistency from the different pieces that are being assembled, both in terms of the style, the like grammar and the way that we're writing it, but also the way that the three different sections are structured, we thought it would be helpful to propose the style guide overall for things like grammar and just the way that you treat capitals, no capitals, things like that, so that we can start out consistently as much as possible. And then on the three sections, actually having an outline for the way that we lay that out too, because that was just done a little bit differently. So that was the aim. That's the only reason that we did this. It's not to be heavy-handed in any way. And you'll see in the style guide, which Pat and Rebecca really put together. There's some open questions that I think they wanted to ask about as well. But that's it. It's supposed to be flexible within, but to provide some of the basics to keep it easy to combine later. And also then for those who really do care about reading it, it's easier to follow if it's a little bit more consistent.
So we all go to an Arial 12 point. And for some reason, like the stuff I got from you looked different than the stuff I got from other people, and it was always like making me crazy, because was that just it was just in Word, right? Everyone should be using Word and just,
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't matter, whatever you have, but,
This will make it look more simple.
yeah, there's a section here about what to capitalize. There is let us discuss the Oxford comma for a moment.
I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so let me just say.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong here. It depends whether you go with the Associated Press manual or the Chicago Manual of Style, for example.
Why don't you define it what it is?
The Oxford comma, the easiest way to think about it is the comma and, if you're doing a list in a series. So dogs, cats, and bears, whether to use the comma or not. Oxford comma, you do use it.
Dog, comma, cat, comma, and.
Comma and, yeah.
Comma.
So it's a comma before the and in a series of,
It's more than two.
And
And-
the Associated Press didn't use it because they were trying to be efficient with the number of actual units that they were using.
That's why they got kicked out of the White House, right?
The comma.
No, they like efficiency.
my personal preference is not to use it. But that's my personal preference.
Say why?
Just because I think it looks neater not to use it. You've got all these commas all along this line, and then you've got the and it just seems like an unnecessary thing before the and.
But
But
actually, I don't think you could go very deep into
Yes.
the pros and
You sure
cons.
can, yeah.
So
I
just
think
make
we
sure,
just need to pick.
yeah,
just
just
need to
to
pick
make sure I
one.
understand it. So it would say dog, comma, cat, comma, and bear, or it could be dog, cat, comma, and bear.
No.
No, it's three commas. It's either
There's a
two
comma
commas or
after the
commas.
first.
Okay?
The only question is there a
Right
comma
before and.
before the
Before
last,
the end.
Before
Before
and,
and.
before the
comma,
end?
and
Oh, I see.
the bear.
Okay. Whatever you guys want, I'm fine.
Both are same, so both are correct in theory.
But
It's what we want.
isn't it true that without the Oxford comma, it can be, the statement can be more confusing?
Exactly,
Yes.
that's why it's there.
That's why some people feel very strongly about using it.
it's cats
But-
and dogs and bears.
But
Right.
I will say, as long as we're consistent throughout the document, it's fine. We just need to.
So wake me up when you decided.
We had the same discussion in my Alfred Man group, believe it or not, because we do a magazine every month. And everybody writes their own article. And some people use it and some people don't. And it created we had the same.
That's hilarious.
What did you guys decide?
Well, we don't have a style guide, so we didn't decide.
We decided not to
But those
decide.
of us who, do most of the writing, we definitely use it. Yeah. I think it's just clarifying, it's just edifying, personally.
I'm willing to go with that. I don't have
How do you
any
do?
strong feeling.
Yes, you do.
So like scientific writing often uses the Oxford comma. I'm used to using it because that's what we use in work. But I'm fine either way.
Okay, but we have to decide. So we have
Let's go.
three Oxford comma people.
Oxford comma. Let's use the Oxford comma.
All right.
There were a few other open questions in there, right?
I feel
Yeah.
relieved now. Okay.
Well, and one other thing to point out to you, does everybody get the parallel structure? Can you tell me what each of those examples has in common?
I don't get it. I don't understand it. Can somebody
Okay.
explain it to me?
Anybody else?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so, and this is one thing that does drive me nuts. I do care strongly about parallel structure. In the first example, those are phrases, I think.
Do you have a copy of this to look at?
No,
Martina, do you have something you can project?
well, I can maybe look over.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the second, they're all questions. In the third, they're just phrases. But you will see every now and then somebody, you know, the first one is a question, the second bullet is a phrase.
I see.
That you want them to all be the same thing, whether they're, it doesn't matter what they are, but just so they're all the same consistent structure. If it's a question, then all of them should be questions. If it's just a bullet, and
Is this one you're looking at, or the other one?
The other one.
the other one.
This one.
And then I just wanted to mention, to bring in here, we're using findings and recommendations in different ways. And speaking of someone who's been on the grand jury and talked about this a great deal, a finding is something that you have found along the way in your research. And a recommendation is something that you want people to change, to do differently. And those two in there are actually from the grand jury wildfire report, which Rebecca should remember well.
So we have numbered recommendations. We had a boatload of them last year, which is, you know, as we're always a year behind. And then in the current year, what we did is we said 4 of them required further follow-up, but those were all recommendations.
Yeah.
And we want to keep track of those. That's the thing, we want to keep track of.
And findings are that body of, in general, the findings are the body narrative of what we learned as we went along.
Right.
So we haven't called them findings, we just have the narrative.
Yeah, we've just had the narrative.
Right.
So is the point of this that you want to make sure that anything that we highlight is a recommendation?
Yeah, and that we're just using the terminology in the same way.
Okay.
And we're just suggesting Arial 12 point. I looked at the past reports, and that's what seems to be the most common one of what we've used. And I think the reason for this is not so much what we do, although that's important, but that all of the things that come out of this office look the same. So I went back, you know, these things are taken from other reports. As you can probably tell by 3,200 homes were inspected. The final thing on there, and this is a quote from our respected leader, I think it was in the executive committee. Mark said, no boilerplate, no cookie cutter. I don't remember what context he was using then, but I thought of that immediately, that if it's worth saying, it's worth writing it anew, that it shouldn't just be. And what we came up with is you can take all the repeated stuff, like the text about Measure C, and move it to the appendix. It doesn't have to be in the document
So does this
itself.
year's document comply with that?
We ended up moving a bunch of stuff, but I think that there are a few things that we might repeat next year that we could then move back. But we
Yeah,
did, but that is why we moved a bunch of the stuff on the responsibilities and other
Right.
things that we were just repeating.
Right, because just to step back on it, because you have to realize that it's likely that someone might just pick up next year's report as the only one they've ever read.
Yeah.
Right? So what we currently have, which is in your list, your agenda, right? So there's a letter from the chair and from the president.
And the letters are new each year, so
Right.
there's no reason not to have that. I think the Measure C thing was the,
Well, what is Measure C and the about, what is CLC and what is Measure C? And to the committee members, that seems to me to be something we would put in the report, not put in the
well,
appendix.
to me, what is Measure C should go in the appendix. It should be there, but it shouldn't be in this prominent space every time.
So I
Who's
would-
on the committee,
Right, so I think we can deal with this later, but my,
Yeah.
my thought on that is if someone picks this up for the first time, a single book square about what is Measure C is okay. The detail in the back has all the precision around it, but just as an introductory thing, I thought that this thing made sense to me. What is the COC, what is Measure C, who are the committee members, that's one page, and then we're done, as a highlight, right? And then in the back, we have a lot of the details
Yeah.
in Measure C.
and if, that's fine, if you wanna repeat what is Measure C each time. That's a minor thing.
Right, but the rest of it's all in the back, so I think we're all in agreement,
Yeah.
the structure seems.
Yeah.
Okay, and if not, you can take a bite at it, when we do our drafting later, so. The other thing I would like to really get into though is Joanne and Measure Marin 7, Joanne who did the detailed work. So when we got towards the end, Elisa had to go back and change a whole bunch of numbers and stuff. And she had it in a Word document, and then
Instead of the source file.
yeah, and then Joanne said, "Oh shit, there's no change mode here, and how do I know what's changed?" And it was like, this is like, I've already read this report 1,000 times, I have to do it again. So it was, at that point, I think it's important that, I don't think it has to be in a document, but it's important as we get towards the end, that we have a very clear understanding between Joanne and the writers. When it gets to this level, the further changes are made, that she can see them and we see them without getting, because we remember we were going through there and all of a sudden she called me up, I didn't even bother to do this, and she goes, "Well, what's changed?" And it was like, oh my God, I have to remember what's changed.
So you're talking about redlining.
Yes, right.
There's
So,
quality.
Not
it's a
everybody
huge
knows how to
quality
do
control
that,
issue.
so there's.
right, so my suggestion is at the end, whoever the final people are, because once it's approved in the group section, there's usually just one or two people who get it across the finish line. Whoever those people are next year, which will not be me, just make sure that we work out with Joanne exactly what she needs to find things, because that was a bit of a
I
hard
think
run.
also winnowing down, like if you could
Yeah.
funnel it to the fewest number of people at the very
Absolutely.
end, the better. Just there's quality control
Totally.
challenges.
Yeah.
Totally.
Version control.
Version control makes me, yeah, okay. All right, have we covered this topic?
Yeah, I think unless anybody has any
Rebecca, do you have anything you want to
objection
add?
or,
Just to say that it wasn't really Rebecca and Pat, it was Pat. Really good, Pat.
okay,
Thank you for that.
Okay, and then so the style guides one, the outline is essentially this, it's the same as the current year's outline, so that's, I think we're probably good with that. So I'd like to move on to board monitoring committees.
I thought we'd done that.
No, we haven't done that yet.
No,
Oh,
the actual report outs.
We
The-
assigned them.
the
but we didn't
report
do
out.
the
Oh,
reports.
oh,
Operations is first, right?
oh,
Yes.
yes,
So
okay.
I don't know if you listened to that too, Pat, that I did. It was a pretty short meeting. Chief Weber's chair now, and it was really about the work plan report for the last year and teeing up what's gonna come next year. And it was quick, done, over. I mean, it was nice to hear there projects like finding that with selective thinning, they've actually increased birdsong recordings, which I thought was really interesting to hear, and I loved that. So they've got some early evidence about increased biodiversity based on some of the wildfire resilience measures. Cool. So anyway, but very efficient, quick, and nothing else that I would flag.
You know, I found that to be one of the most interesting operations committees that I've ever watched. And part of that was there was some real discussion, particularly on Fire Safe Marin's increase in budget, and there was some good observations of if Fire Safe Marin is our educational wing, why isn't it a part of the organization? Why is it a separate organization? And I, for one, would think that it could become a part of this organization, because that's all it does, except for having the Firewise meetings. And everything else it does is aimed right at what we are.
Well, how are
doing
they
here.
financed? How are they financed?
They're
Multiple
financed
sources.
entirely by us
Oh,
now.
okay, all right, so that's not a
They get
change.
some grants though, they get some, I mean,
Okay,
They used to spend a lot of their time raising money,
Mhm.
and they had fewer employees. And now they're virtually entirely funded by, but that was the most interesting thing that I found.
And they also start to discuss the 0 to 5 foot zone and the challenges that's gonna bring.
what's in the 5-foot zone? I know there's a lot of debate about that, right, so.
Because I did remark on that what we need to let people know is that we're not gonna try and remove their beautiful heritage trees. It's not about their trees, which everyone's so emotionally connected to, because that's the first thing they're gonna think. My oak tree has to go. So that's the message that I think we really have to get out.
Yeah, no, we were tip of the spear when Mill Valley tried to do that, with
Yeah.
and ours was 5, the new is 3, right? No, ours was
Yours
3,
was 3.
ours was 3, it's the other way around, ours was 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got a lot, it was a very dramatic meeting.
Yeah, well, I was with
I'll bet.
ESP and we were hearing about what was going on in Mill Valley, and some
Right.
people had already started to cut down trees, and we're like, stop.
Okay, well, as it is now 7
Yeah.
minutes to, and it's the last meeting I want to chair, I want to make sure we get out without going over time. So I believe we already did cover the exec committee. There are no further questions. Rebecca, anything else you want to jump in on? Okay. So I would propose that we finish this meeting. I want to thank you guys putting up with me to chair for last year, and I think we've got
You've been
good
wonderful.
progress, and I'm looking forward to passing the baton. It's yours now. Okay,
big shoes, big shoes.
all right,
We don't have the,
meeting adjourned.
You don't have a baton.
Exactly. I didn't bring my baton, man.
didn't we have one when Larry?
I brought one a few times.
Yeah, that's what it was. I knew we had.
Thanks, Rebecca.
I got a half dozen in my house.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.